Hi there. Welcome to another Richmond School District Numeracy video. This video is going to focus on the high-yield instructional routine, SPLAT. My name is Janice Nowakowski, and I am a district teacher consultant for the Richmond School District, supporting teachers in the areas of mathematics and numeracy from kindergarten through grade 12. SPLAT is a routine that focuses on students figuring out an unknown quantity under the splat. Kind of looks like a puddle. And they know the total quantity that is provided for them, and they know the other part of the quantity, but they need to figure out the unknown. So this routine really focuses on algebraic thinking. For those of you that have used Math Their Way and have been teaching for a while, this is very similar to the bears in the cave task from Math Their Way, where we had a collection of bears. Some of them went into a cave, which was a margarine container back in the days, and students had to figure out based on what they could see. They knew how many bears there were. They can see how many bears are outside of the cave, and they had to figure out how many were in the cave. Same idea, just sort of reinterpreted for a tech-savvy teaching community, and with thanks to Steve Wyborny. So Steve Wyborny is a math coach in the state of Oregon, and his website, stevewyborny.com, hosts all these SPLAT slides that you can download for free. And they come in PowerPoint or they come in Google Slides. And he has lots of other resources available on his website as well that are very much worth exploring. So when you download a set of slides, they will look like this. All the transitions are built in, and you can just click through and project them on a screen in your classroom for students to engage in the routine with. So on the top right-hand side, you can see an example of a single splat. In the box, that number 18 is the total quantity of dots. We can see that there's 3 blue dots outside of the splat. So students need to think about, well, how can I figure out how many are under the splat? On the bottom left, you have a multiple splat, where there are 3 black splats. And that when the splats are all the same color, that means it's a single variable type of question, that it means that there's the same quantity of dots under each of those splats. So here we have a total quantity of 2, we have 3 black splats, and then we have 4 blue dots that we can see. So again, think about it yourself. How would you go about solving that particular splat problem or question? When you download the slides, and again, you put in your email, but you don't get any other emails other than being able to download the slides, you get a set of splats. And this is set 3.1. It has multiple splats. The quantities change. So you can go from kindergarten level all the way through secondary with the different types of splat variations and quantities involved. So we'll just go through one sequence together. You start with a blank screen, and then the total quantity of dots pops up. You could have students estimate. I just leave this here for a short time to encourage visualization and estimating instead of counting. So about how many? Is it about between 10 and 20 or 15 and 20? Use that idea of range to help students come up with a reasonable estimate. And then it gives you the total quantity that is provided. So in this case, we know that there's 19 total blue dots, and then the splat comes on, and you can add a fun sound effect if you want. Because of the slides theme I'm sharing, the splats are white, but most slide themes, they're black. And so we've got 3 splats here, 4 on the 4 blue dots, and the total quantity of 19. So again, think about how you might solve that. You'd have students turn and talk, share their thinking, and then take their different solutions and strategies. So I think that there's this many under the splat because, and make sure that they're explaining and justifying their solution. And then the slides have these transitions built in where they reveal the number of dots under each splat. And again, if the class is really into it, they'll start cheering if this is what they thought it was. And then that's the end of that slide. And again, you could just do one a day, or you could do a couple because it doesn't take that long. But it's this is this lovely instructional routine that's an opening to your lesson. If you're doing a lesson on algebraic thinking or composing and decomposing quantities or operations of any sort, because there's all sorts of connections to addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division in these. And then connecting to algebraic equations. Here's an example of a multiple splat. So we know that total quantity is 24. The constant we know that there's 9 blue dots outside of the splats. The coefficient is 5 because we see that there's 5 splats, but we don't know how many are in each splat. So that's the unknown or the variable. So again, having students write an equation that represents the splat is another extension for doing splat with our older students. There's other variations on the splat routine. There's the nested splat series. And again, you can download these all through Steve's site. So the first splat is black. And so you have that total amount, 3 on the outside, so 12. So there's 9 under the black splat. And then the black splat transitions off, and then you see a purple splat with a smaller quantity under it. So then you're figuring out the different parts that make up the whole. And again, having students write the equations for that and introduce the concept of brackets for that total amount under the splat is a way to introduce that symbolic connection to this routine. On the right-hand side, you see the fraction splat series. So you see the whole quantities or a whole number or whole one is represented by a blue dot. And then you have fractional pieces as well. The total quantity is 7. So what is the amount under the splat? And that could be a combination of whole dots and fractional pieces. This connects obviously to grade 8 curriculum in terms of operations with fractions, but also can be used in grade 4, grade 5, grade 6, grade 7, as students think about equivalent fractions and different ways to represent fractions and whole numbers and fractional parts, mixed numbers, improper fractions, all those ideas. If you don't have access to, a screen or technology or a projector in your classroom, you can also do a very low-tech version. This is just a piece of poster board that I used and cut out a splat shape and put some magnets on the back and then used magnetic dots on a whiteboard to do splat with a kindergarten class. And again, thinking about 3 and what makes 8 and thinking about those parts whole relationships. And then after doing it as an instructional routine at the beginning of a lesson, one of your, if you do a math workshop or centers or stations approach, one of the tables could be set up for students to do splat together. And this is something they really like doing, is one partner sets up the splat and puts the splat down, and then the other partner has to figure out how many dots are under the splat. So thinking about this particular math instructional routine and all the different competencies, curricular competencies that are developed over time when you do this routine regularly over the school year and then over grades. So first of all, developing mental math strategies and ability to make sense of quantities, and that's very much connected to algebraic thinking as well, visualizing, communicating, explaining and justifying, and connecting mathematical concepts to each other. So again, that connection between operations, fractions, algebra, etc. And then on the right-hand side, you can I just chose some of the content learning standards from kindergarten through grade 9 that could be practiced and developed through the use of this instructional routine. And then here's an example from Catherine Meyer's grade 1 and 2 class, where she was having students create their own splat stories and then load those videos up to their e-portfolios. They could also take a photograph and do the oral narration as well, as a way to share their learning and their thinking around different math concepts and competencies. And then an example from another K1 classroom, Mrs. Toy's class at Splat. And so doing a splat routine at the beginning, and you can see that top left photo there, I've shared on the bottom the different strategies that the students shared for how they figured this out. And so creating some visuals to support learning in that classroom. So I thought about it in my head. I connected it to a dot pattern I was familiar with. I counted up using my fingers, or I counted up in my head. And then after the routine, the middle or the body of the lesson, the students could create their own math story. So they could choose between a splat story, a combining story, or a counting story. And this was in a kindergarten and grade 1 class. And again, I just cut out some little felt mats, splat mats, that could be used over and over again. And you can see in the background there are some numerals as well as some materials to count. And students came up with their different splat stories. And then for the closing for the lesson, they did some sharing around that, and we connected these ideas. As you do Splat, you'll start to see Splat in the possibilities of Splat in maybe some picture books or pieces of art that you find. And so this book, At the Pond, comes in English as well as en français. And so this is a lovely picture book. It's a counting book, but there are some instances in the book for an opportunity for Splat. So a frog comes along or a great blue heron comes along and the fish hide under the lily pads. And so you could create some lily pads that are actual splats and use orange cubes to represent the fish and play with this idea as an extension to this book. And then doing Splat Outdoors, in the fall, finding some beautiful big leaves, and students might collect chestnuts or acorns or rocks or little sticks, and you could again play Splat outside. How many do we have together? Do it as a counting collection and then play with Splat, covering some of them up and having students figure out the missing part. Hats off to Francesca Fotheringham, a grade 2, 3 and teacher at Grower Elementary, who does Splat every year with her students. And this was just a recent bulletin board she did where she put up some of the splats from Steve White-Borney's website that she printed off and then had students create their own splats. And these were put up in the hallway so that classmates and children from other classes and colleagues and teachers, as they go by, they could be thinking about, oh, well, how would I solve this? So a way to sort of make that math learning visible in your school and build math community in your school as well. So thank you for sharing that, Francesca. Also available in our district, either on the district math blog and on the portal, are Splat posters that you could print off to put in your foyer or in your hallways. Again, when we have parents able to come back into schools again, these are a way of making these math instructional routines visible to parents that we're doing these in our classrooms. So they're available to download in English and French. And thank you to Carrie Bourne for translating those. So as we close this video, I want you to think about how will you use this high yield instructional routine with your students. And thank you for joining me today.